Hey everybody, Austin and Rachel Holt here, and welcome back to the Conscious Christian Marriage Podcast. We are your hosts. We're excited to hang out with you today, and we've got 3 really great questions that have been listener submitted that we're just going to be answering for you guys today live together. And we think that these answers are going to help you in your marriage, so get excited. But before we jump into... That's right. Before we jump into those 3 questions, Rachel and I are going to just share a quick appreciation for each other, like we like to start pretty much everything that we do, because we believe appreciation is really powerful. And we hope the way that we appreciate each other will inspire you to appreciate your spouse. So, Rachel?
Austin,
I would like to go first. I'm just kidding. You can go.
Austin, I really appreciate you for being an awesome dad. But specifically for yesterday, painting the girls' nails. That was adorable, and I know that blessed their hearts, and they had a good time with you.
That was really fun. You know, it was like yesterday morning, I had just realized, I'm like, I have not sat down with all 3 girls and painted all their nails. And I was like, that just sounds really fun to me. I can paint yours next time if you want. I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah,
actually.
I remember, did you do that while we were dating?
Probably.
At least early marriage, you were like, hey, come to Austin's salon or something.
Oh,
you
nice.
Like set a whole thing up and you did that.
Sounds actually kind of creepy as I reflect back on it, but whatever won you over that's good for me. Rachel, one thing I want to appreciate you for is the last 2-3 weeks have been crazy, you know, as we've wrapped up some big projects on the home front, and I just appreciate that you go with your gut a lot, and generally when you and we go with your gut, you're usually right. And sometimes I can get lost in just overanalyzing, and you're really good at not having so much decision fatigue, I think, as I can sometimes, which is like, okay, 50 people have asked me 50 questions today. I just try to focus on answering like 3 to 5 really important questions a day. And I know the kids ask you like a million questions, you know, all day. And we had, you know, contractors asking us questions, and it was just a really busy couple weeks. And I just really appreciate how you were just like really in flow, and you're able to just trust your gut. And yeah, that always impresses me, and I just appreciate you just trusting yourself and having good intuition. Because again, generally when you're being intuitive, you're usually right, and good things happen for our family. So
thank you.
Way to be awesome.
I received that.
Good. I'm glad. Pound it. Yeah. You want to shake my hand? Should I get this over with now?
We're doing this every episode.
I'm going to do this
now.
2 or 3 times. I love shaking your hand. I don't know why. It's kind of hot in some way.
Like a hug for your hand.
Yeah, a hand hug. Yeah, I got to think about that for a minute. That's pretty good. All right, so...
Is it too intimate that you shake a stranger's hand now that I've been shaking yours?
I think, I don't know.
My
I don't think
goodness.
so. Yeah, it's
I'm
different
just
because we have the bond. We have that electricity. So, all right, everyone. So we're going to go through 3 questions. These have been questions that have been submitted by listeners just like you. And these are actually questions that we get fairly often. And we like to do this from time to time where we might take a break from the more like curriculum training-driven episodes we like to do and just answer questions, you know, because those of you who leave comments or who email us or go to our website or social media and submit questions, we do read all those. And sometimes we respond via email, and sometimes we're like, hey, that's a great podcast topic. So the 3 that have been submitted for today are not just ones that have been like listener submitted, but these are also questions that we've gotten for years that I feel like we've answered a million times.
Yeah.
And so they felt like really fun questions to kind of riff on, and just timely questions because of just where the world is today. So, all right, Rachel, first question. I'll ask you this question. Totally off the cuff, no notes. We don't use notes around here. Every time I say that, I think about Back to the Future. He's like, roads. He's like, where we're going, we don't need roads. For any of my Back to the Future fans. So question number 1, Rachel, is how do I get my spouse to share more?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
So the first question we would ask you as food for thought is, how do you usually respond to your spouse when they are sharing? So are you a welcome place when they come to share? Are you someone that says, you know, uses our connection cards responses that like, tell me more. I want to hear more about that. Then what happens? So are you a welcome space, especially if your spouse is sharing something difficult, something about you personally? If your spouse is maybe addressing something that can be dicey, do you love yourself enough to receive that well? Do you love do you have enough love in the container to be an open, receiving, safe place for your spouse to be able to share? So that's a good question that you can ask yourself. Am I someone who receives my spouse's anything?
Yeah, because that's something that it's almost cliche, but even the example of, my spouse is finally helping around the house, but then the way they do it, I just critique, and then they're like, okay, well, forget that. It's like the classic, like, the wife wants the husband to help, more around the house. And so he like finally does the dishes, and then he does them wrong. Then she's like, oh, you forgot to hand wash them before you put them in there. And he's like, all right, well, never mind. I'll just go do what I know I'm already good at. I'll go to work, or I'll work in the yard, or I'll
where
do
I get
whatever.
appreciated.
And also where I get appreciated the most. But I think the same thing is with sharing. We hear a lot of times that a spouse wants a spouse to share more. And then when they finally do open up, they might get criticized, and, we always say that the difference between feedback and criticism is usually connection. Like if you're really connected to your spouse, feedback comes across as feedback. If you're not very connected, feedback comes across as criticism because there's not enough connection to kind of hold the feedback, And so if you're wanting your spouse to share more, like Rachel said, it's really important to be like, am I really good at listening? Am I good at responding? Do I appreciate my spouse when they share? And I think just being able to be intuitive about what environment did they grow up in and how was them having a voice welcomed or not?
Yeah.
And then wondering, like, have we created a similar environment to that now? Am I a welcome place for them? Do I listen well? Do I respond with my own filter? Or do I actually encourage them to share more? Because a lot of times, a spouse may not want to share because they know you're not going to listen. They know you're going to listen through a filter of your own experience and respond based on your experience versus responding on what they said from their perspective.
Right.
Empathy is not imagining what it's like to be in their shoes. It's imagining what it's like to be them in their shoes.
Right.
And sometimes listening is the same way. It's like, am I listening for them or am I listening for me and then responding through my own stuff? Am I actually listening and responding without a filter, like just to them? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's something that we've certainly grown through. And I've personally certainly grown through because the environment that I grew up in when I was younger, feedback was generally given in a way that traumatized me.
Yeah.
And so when you gave feedback, even if there was like a tense tone where you're just feeling passionate or just expressing yourself.
Yeah.
And that could be a point of connection for me to receive that and say, oh, he's expressing himself. He's sharing from his heart.
Yeah.
But for me, I would take it personally and want to defend because I would be so scared of being at fault because of the way that I learned to self-preserve growing up.
Yeah.
So that's something I've learned to be more receptive, more receiving, and appreciative when you do share and when you express your emotions.
Yeah. I think another thing too, and this is something we've helped other couples with, is understanding the context and the purpose of the sharing. So sometimes I might say to you like, hey, do you want me to just listen and just be like a good ear for you? Or do you want me to respond? Like, do you want feedback? Do you want suggestions? And sometimes you're like, I just want you to listen. Yeah. So then like, I'll just listen and that's it. And then sometimes you're like, yeah, I do want like a solution, And I think that if your spouse isn't someone who naturally opens up, I think it's really important to have that conversation, before they share. It's like, and even if you're the spouse that has a hard time sharing, maybe it might support you in just saying, hey, I want to share some things with you, and here's my objective with sharing.
Yeah.
Like I either just want to be heard, or I want to feel more connected to you, or I'd like feedback on what I'm saying. But again, I think this question was asked really for the spouse that wants their spouse to share more. Because another thing that we teach a lot is that in a lot of relationships, you've got someone who is a little bit more anxious, and they might be the one sharing more. And then you might have one that's a little bit more avoidant, to where they don't feel as connected through sharing a lot. They might feel more connected through quality time or just by proximity. But generally, there's one person who likes to share a lot, and then they're wanting the other person to share more. So if you're wanting the other person to share more, again, listening really well, understanding the point of the conversation you're wanting them to have, and just being honest with them about how you connect and relate to them. I think even just being able to say to your spouse, like, hey, I love you, and I love the way you show up, and I love, our connection. I would love to converse more. Like, I would love to hear from you more. Versus like, why don't you talk? It's like, I would love to know more about your inner world. One of the schools I thought that we, pull a lot from is Gottman, the Gottman Institute. And really part of the foundation of building a great relationship, through part of their model is knowing each other's inner world. And so just inviting your spouse to share their inner world with you is really important, and that's going to also really tie into, I think, the third question that we're going to answer today, just about knowing what to share, know. But I would argue that any detail about your inner world, I want to know because it helps me feel connected to you. And it will help me know how to serve you. It'll help me know how to respond to you. It'll help me know how to be gracious with you. Because if I know, even if I know you've been deliberating all day long about what, bar stools to buy for our kitchen, it's going to help me just know more about what's in your inner world. Like, maybe you've just second guessed yourself, for some reason about some decision, and that might make you a little bit less patient, or it might make you a little less excited for me to tell you about something I'm excited about because you've been, in turmoil all day about, I'm kind of being facetious. But so if you're trying to get your spouse to share more, be transparent about what you want and why.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I just want you to know that I would love to hear more about your inner world. I'd love to hear more about your day. I'd love to hear more about what you're thinking, feeling, not because I'm upset with you, but because I love you and I love learning more about you and I love feeling really connected to you. Because a lot of people are not invited to talk. More often than not, people are told to talk less.
Yeah.
I think about that with our kids immediately.
It's like, oh, where does that come from? Parents.
Yeah. All of our kids are pretty extroverted, so I feel like not very often am I like, hey, I want you to talk twice as much as you talk now.
I just thought about that.
Yeah, usually it's like, hey, you've asked 400 questions this hour. We're going to cap it there.
You get 5 more questions for the rest of the day. That is a good parenting strategy, by the way. Say, okay, 5 more questions.
5 more questions.
But then your kids get really creative.
Yeah.
Because they'll say, I wonder what yada, yada, yada.
They try to ask a question without asking. Yeah, that's really
Anyway.
good. So the second big thought on this question is actually more of a strategy. A lot of times, someone gets really stuck in not wanting to share because of their perception of the consequence, or their perception of what happens next.
Stories.
Yeah, stories. A lot of people are afraid to share a lot because of what could come next. And so a lot of times, someone who doesn't share a lot, they actually will ask questions more than they will share because they like to kind of test the water. They like to kind of see, like, instead of me saying, hey, Rachel, I would like to have steak for dinner, I might be like, hey, what do you want for dinner?
Think date night. When you're getting in the car and you're getting ready to go somewhere. Like, hey, where do you want to eat? You generally probably already have something in mind.
Most people already know.
You might prefer.
Yeah. But here's the thing. A lot of people were trained as a child not to rock the boat. So if I know what the boat is, before I say something, I will know how to not rock it, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a survival strategy, or kind of a, how to just kind of keep the peace. For me to say something like, hey, where do you want to eat tonight? And then if you say something in the ballpark of what I want, I might just go ahead and agree with you. So then we feel harmonious. Because for a lot of people growing up, it was like, well, it's more risky to talk a lot than it is to not talk a lot. Because if you grew up in a home where you were criticized a lot, or a lot of snappy, harsh responses, you were trained to not share a lot. What you were trained to do was kind of test the waters with something, make sure the waters weren't dangerous before you'd actually put yourself out there. And then more than likely, you'd put your statement out there and then you'd get shut down. So for a lot of couples, they're actually just stuck in a pattern of asking questions versus making statements of what they want. So those of you who might have a spouse that you want to share more, here's a really fun exercise that we'll have couples do, is we'll say, go a week. And if you need to start with 3 days, that's fine too. 3 days, a week, 2 weeks. But go a week or two and agree to not ask questions. And that might seem impossible. It's actually not. Now, if you are in a situation where you need to ask a logistical question,
what time is it?
Yeah. But you could say, I wonder.
I want to know what time it is.
Yeah, exactly. I want to know what time it is. That's a request, okay? Now, let's say you're pulled over, you're driving on the road speeding, you get pulled over and you can't find your insurance card. You might need to call your spouse and be like, hey, where's our insurance card? Oh, it's in Dropbox. Great. But here's what's powerful about this, is imagine if for a week you no longer asked questions to your spouse. Instead of saying, Rachel, are you okay? I might say, hey, Rachel, I would love to know how you're doing today. Or instead of saying something like, hey, do you want to watch a movie tonight? I might say, Rachel, I would love to spend some quality time with you tonight. And you could say back to me,
I'd like to go sit by the fire pit.
And even if I don't agree with that, even if I don't want to do that, I might say, I hear you that you want to go sit by the fire pit. I would really enjoy hopping in the hot tub. And then you might say something like,
that sounds interesting. How about we do the fire pit for 15 minutes?
You just asked a
Wait,
question.
that's a question?
Yeah, I gotcha. See, it's tricky.
I could say, I think I would be open to doing the fire pit for 15 minutes, and then we could do the hot tub just to kind of however long we want.
Yeah, and then notice how she didn't say, what do you think? So now I have a chance. Basically, the exercise invites expression.
Yeah.
A lot of people who, like if you're asking the question, I want my spouse to share more, they may not be trained to express well. Expression might be risky or dangerous to them. Or it's just a skill, okay? Mm-hmm. It's a soft skill that people have to develop, you know? And so even what we just did is so fun, you know, where it's like, you know, let's just say that there's something going on with the kids. I might say, Rachel, I'm feeling feelings of frustration about the kids. And you might say,
I am fearful that your feelings of frustration with them might be attached to me because I'm their primary caregiver during the day and responsible for a lot of their development and discipline.
Yeah.
And then I'd leave it at that.
Yep.
See what you said.
And then I might say, I really appreciate you sharing that. I want you to know that I think that you've done a great job parenting, and a lot of these feelings are maybe my own insecurities or shortcomings. I'm curious what it might look like for us to get more strategic about how we discipline the kids while being on the same page.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I want you to know you're the perfect husband. That's what you'd say next.
Right.
But I hope everyone sees the point of this. It is a little advanced, and you've got to play with it. But it's actually fun. And the reason I brought this up was because if you have a spouse that struggles with sharing, make this a game. Make it fun. Okay.
Make an agreement to do this.
Make an agreement.
You both have to be on the same page.
But like we've got a couple that we're working with right now, 2-on-2, and one issue they have struggled with is making you statements. Okay, like you made me angry, versus saying I felt angry when you yelled at the kids, or I felt sad when you racked up the credit card. Okay, and so my challenge for them over the next few weeks was, hey, only make I statements for the next week or two. And every time you make a you statement, you have to send me $10. So for the first part of that week, it was awesome for me. But then it slowly tapered off. I'm just kidding. But so if you want to help your spouse share more, this is a really great strategy. Have fun with it. Kind of make it a game and just say, hey, I would love to make an agreement where for a week, we don't ask each other questions. We just make statements. And it's actually really fun because it's just really fun. So there's a lot we could share on this, but that's just really what came up for me when we got this question was like, cut questions out. Just cut questions out for a week and just watch how much more you will express. So instead of, you know, what are you thinking and feeling? That it kind of almost feels accusatory versus, hey, Rachel, I am really curious about what's going on in that sweet little heart of yours. See how inviting that is?
Yeah. And doing it this way teaches you, it's helping you grow the muscle of responsibility.
Yes.
Of approaching everything you say and do from personal responsibility. And then also helps your literally brain develop new neural pathways. He's shaking my hand again.
Yeah.
Austin.
I don't know what, you keep asking for it.
My hand motions.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
Yeah. I wasn't finished.
I threw you off.
I threw you off. Handshake. It helps develop new neural pathways. It'll help you guys just be more connected because when you are sharing what we call the inarguable truth, which is like, I am thinking, I am feeling, I am wondering, I would like, I want to, all these things. It's no shadow games, as we like to call it. Like, there's no shadow games. There's no room for drama with that.
A lot of things are hidden in questions.
Yes, there's so much hidden in questions. So you will start to see a difference in your connection because you'll have fun with it. Like, you just listened to us, like we're goofy. And we kind of messed up a couple times. Oh, that's a question, you know. But it's fun. Yeah,
I think about even situations where, you know, a couple's in a learning opportunity, you know, and someone's like, oh, you're just going to leave the room, huh? Like, that's a question. And imagine how much more powerful that statement would be if it was like, hey, I'm feeling fear that you're leaving the room, you know, or I'm feeling fear that we're not communicating well, or I feel really joyful when you sit down with me, hold my hands, look me in the eye, and tell me that you appreciate me. It's just really powerful. So we just want to encourage anyone out there, if you're trying to get your spouse to share more, make it a game, make it kind of fun. And if you want to, you could commit to only asking or to not asking questions for a week. And every time you slip up, you could just send us $10.
Or send it to our nonprofit.
Actually, even better, Rachel. Man, I love your heart. Send it to our nonprofit.
If you were a coaching client of ours, you'd be sending us $10.
Yes, that's right. But yes, you can send it to the nonprofit. It
really helps.
Wow, that's a great idea.
But we wouldn't know.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Send us an
we'll
email.
trust him. Yeah, we'll trust him. All right, let's move on to the second question. So the second question is pretty different in nature. This is a little bit more of kind of a clinical, medical question. Rachel, you want to ask me the second question?
Yeah, so this is a follow-up from our anxiety episode on the podcast. So if you've listened to that episode, whether you have or haven't, this is a follow-up question from that. If you haven't, go back and listen. But this person listened, and she has had mental illness in both of her parents growing up. She has taken medication in the past for specifically anxiety, and she was asking for our opinion on whether we think medication is okay, when there's a time and place for it. And so if I were to kind of sum up what she was asking, I would say, is anxiety medication or medication for mental and emotional issues, is it okay?
Great question. So first thing I want to say is in all matters of medical diagnosis, information, etc., we advise you seek out duly licensed medical counsel of your own choosing. That's my disclaimer there. We are not doctors. Everything we're going to say here is purely educational, anecdotal, maybe based on certain evidence and things like that. But we're not doctors, so we're not doctors. With that being said, we'll just get into it. So first thing, that's my disclaimer. The second is, it's important to understand that some people do have a physiological or genetic, or genetic disposition to where the chemicals in their brain do not balance as well. And that purely could be hereditary, genetic, etc., to where, maybe your neurological system does not produce certain neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, okay? Dopamine is kind of your motivation neurotransmitter, and serotonin is kind of your mood regulation. Those are the two primary ones. There's lots of other ones we could talk about. And so you might have a disposition where you just produce less of one of those, and it could purely be hereditary or genetic. That is a possibility. I think it's less prominent than we think. I think a lot of times someone goes to a doctor or they'll go to a psychiatrist and they will prescribe for them some type of medicine. And some are incredibly responsible and thorough in assessing all the different factors such as diet, exercise, genetics, environment, all those things before prescribing medicine. And to those doctors who do that, I praise you, I honor you, I appreciate you for doing extreme due diligence before just putting someone on a medication. I think that's a very small part of the medical community. I think that there is quite a few in that world that are not doing comprehensive diagnosis before putting people on anti-anxiety, anti-depression medication. Unfortunately, I really believe that is true. But I just want to make sure that if you're sitting there and from a clinical perspective, you've been tested and it's proven that your body's not producing certain neurotransmitters or certain hormones. Okay, you've got your neurological system produces your neurotransmitters, and your endocrine or your hormone system produces your hormones. There could be a physiological. Okay, for example, you get in a car wreck, you hit your head on the steering wheel, and you have a TBI or brain damage, and now a certain part of either your limbic or your endocrine or your neurological system is not functioning properly. Certain things will not help that other than medicine, potentially. So I just want to make sure anyone out there that's like, well, no, Austin, you just said a whole lot of stuff, but I have a proven medical thing. That could be true. So I want to honor that. Okay, I want to make sure that's super clear. So that's the first thing I want to say. Second thing I want to say is that I appreciate certain medical interventions from a triage perspective. Okay, just like I appreciate certain therapeutic interventions from a triage perspective, things like EMDR and certain things that will help us get someone who's got maybe heavy trauma or something precluding them from living life to a place where they can begin to function and then begin to manage symptoms in a more scalable way. And certain medication is like that. Okay, and there's lots of different medical interventions to help people triage from a place of non-functioning to functioning. Right. Because they have to be able to function so that we can then work on more sustainable layers of treatment.
Yeah, kind of like getting them to a place that's bringing them up above the waves so that they can then not be drowning in the issue and come to a place that's going to be able to help them to have a solid foundation to get to a certain level to where they can then start healing and building and doing some of that work.
Yes.
Because if you're so thrown off and you're so dysregulated, you won't be able to sustainably, work with a counselor, work with someone coaching you, assessing you, helping you do all these different trauma healing processes. So I definitely agree that medication does have its place, both for, like you said, people who really do have the imbalance and need it, but also for maybe if you're struggling so much that you do need it to get to a place to then be able to build upon that.
Yeah, it's amazing that if you're missing a proper amount of just serotonin, how miserable life can feel.
Yeah.
Or if you've got a hormonal imbalance, in your endocrine system, how and there's this thing called the gut neuroendocrine axis, and that's way too deep of a topic to talk about here. But there's three different what we call neuroendocrine axes. There's the gut, the bronchial, and the epidermis. But it's basically three different places in our body that is kind of regulating this connection between our endocrine system and our hormone system. And so one throws off the other, okay? And then catastrophic things can happen. This is why someone could have all the reason in the world to just be happy, and they don't feel happy. So our neurotransmitters and our hormones are incredibly powerful, which is really why here in a second we're going to talk a lot about lifestyle and health and why that's so important. Because, even in instances of things like birth control, and this statement is not advocacy or against birth control, but if your birth control is off by just the smallest degree, it can throw off a female's endocrine system wildly, and she ends up with anxiety or depression or worse. And so these systems are so delicate, we have to be so careful. And that's why the assessment and the testing and then the study, the efficacy, has to be so detailed and so scientific, because the variables are just, the tolerance level between variables is just too tight. Anyways, I could just go way into that world, and I don't want to right now. So back to what I was saying. If you need to take medicine prescribed to you by a psychiatrist that will help you get to a place where more sustainable treatment, like Rachel said, get you above the waves, that's one aspect of it, okay? And so taking it lifelong while not taking care of other things is more the issue, and we're going to talk about that next. So if you need the medicine to triage, the person who submitted this question used the word okay. Like, is it okay? And by that, I take that as, is it permissible based on general ethics, morals, values? I think the answer is yes. If you need to take it to get to a place where more sustainable treatment can happen, yes. And someone could take that statement and run wild with it, so don't do that. But I think under certain circumstances, yes. So getting to the more, maybe the answer people are after, or the more kind of tricky answer here, or the nuanced is, if you are wanting to treat your anxiety or your depression, you have to look at it as a lifestyle change, not as a medicine. Okay? If you're wanting to treat your anxiety and your depression, and all you do is go to a psychiatrist, and now granted, you can't generally walk into a psychiatrist's office and they're going to prescribe any of the, I could name them. They're not necessarily going to do that. Okay, they want to know that you've seen a counselor, you've seen a therapist, maybe you've seen a psychologist, the psychologist refers you to a psychiatrist. The big difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist is a psychiatrist can prescribe neurological medicine and neurological drugs. They want to make sure that you've done due diligence, you've been assessed, you get assessed again before they do that. Now, I don't believe in a model where someone would prescribe neurological medication and not also prescribe a lifestyle change. Okay? If you're eating inflammatory foods, if you're never exercising, if you're eating food dyes, seed oils, if you're
gluten and dairy,
smoking heavily, drinking heavily, taking other drugs, if you're sedentary, if you're watching garbage television, if you're listening to garbage things, if you're basically poisoning every aspect of your body, I don't think any amount of those drugs is going to help you. It's kind of how I think about like different supplement companies. Everyone wants to offer you a different supplement, right? Whether it's off the shelf or it's an MLM or it's whatever. Like we have friends of ours, like our friends Tamara and Neil down in Florida, and they recommend an incredible supplement line, but they also recommend exercising, eating well, drinking juices, spending time in the sun, etc. And so I'm going to take someone like that way more serious because they're offering something more comprehensive about your health. And so if someone's recommending that you take this type of medicine, but they're not looking at your entire lifestyle, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you need to use the medicine to triage yourself into a place, again, where more sustainable intervention and treatment can happen, I think that's great.
Yeah.
You are not supposed to live there. Okay. It's kind of like the saying, like, God will take you as you are, but that doesn't mean he wants you to stay there. Okay. It's a little bit like that. If you have tried a lot of things and nothing is working and you need to get to a place where you can pick yourself up off the ground and keep going forward and function, get there. But once you realize that you might have a disposition that requires, neurological medicine or endocrine medicine, you also need to look at your entire lifestyle. Because I've known people that have juiced for 30 days and dropped all their meds. Okay, actually, there's an incredible documentary. I don't agree with everything in this documentary. I just want to make sure it's super clear, but it's called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And it's this man's journey with juicing. We watched that like 10 years ago, and we've integrated juicing into our life for the last 10 years because of that documentary. What you're putting in your stomach, what you're rubbing on your skin, the perfumes you may be putting on.
The air fresheners.
When people like Glade plugins, sorry Glade, I'm just going to throw you under the bus here. The amount of people that are getting sick or could be getting sick from having a Glade plugin in their home is unbelievable.
Or comparable products.
Or Bed Bath & Beyond. Yeah, Bed Bath & Beyond soaps and lotions.
Yeah.
So again, back to the gut-brain neuroendocrine axis, you have this thing called your epidermis, gut-brain endocrine axis. Okay, epidermis, brain, endocrine axis. What you're rubbing on the largest organ on your body is getting absorbed into your bloodstream. And if those chemicals are messing up the way that your brain and your body work together, don't be surprised when you're depressed.
Because they are chemicals.
They are poison.
Yeah.
Okay, your Glade plugins, your Bed Bath & Beyond body lotions and stuff like that, and perfumes.
Even like the brand like Myers Clean Day or whatever it's called. It's like kind of the bougie, like, oh, we're going to be healthy. But if you actually read the ingredients list, it's not all natural.
Yeah. And you got to look at things. I made a whole list here, but you got to look at things like how much time are you spending in the sun getting real vitamin D? How much sleep are you getting? Are you exercising?
Sleep is huge, yeah.
And so I typically believe in what we call displacement rather than replacement. So if you're someone listening to this and you are taking either a microdose or a full dose type regimen to counteract anxiety or depression, number one, counseling, coaching, therapy. Okay, we work with people all the time that have these type of situations to help them get free. But there's other people like us that also do that. So if you're doing that, so we believe in displacement, which means if you're struggling with that, get help interpersonally. Okay, find a counselor, find a coach, someone who's qualified and really good at helping someone like you. Get out in the sun, get real vitamin D. Stop drinking tap water. No one should be drinking tap water. I use the word should. I know. Don't drink tap water. Okay, our tap water in this country is terrible. Okay, drink purified water. Okay, drink spring water. Okay, just get a Brita water pitcher for $20 on Amazon. Okay, drink better water. Exercise. Get your body moving. Okay, Google search what are inflammatory foods and stop eating them. Okay.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen is as your body gets clean for maybe the first time in a long time, 80% of your serotonin is in your stomach. Okay. And really what connects your stomach to your brain is called your vagus nerve or your primary cranial nerve. The main neurotransmitter responsible for regulating your mood, how you feel, happy, sad, angry, sexual, fearful, it's the connection between it and your brain is basically one. Okay. A lot of times we say that the gut is the second brain. So if you're filling your gut with junk, you're mixing junk with the main neurotransmitter that's responsible for your mood. So if your tummy is full of garbage, don't expect your serotonin levels to be regulated well.
Yeah. And you have to make a conscious choice because that stuff is addictive. Literally, there are teams of people that their full-time job is to make sure their food is addictive.
Yeah. Go read go read the book Wheat Belly.
Yeah.
And you'll find out how wheat is just as, if not more, addictive than most opioids.
Yeah. And so you have to make the conscious choice, step out of that, because your brain, when you are, when your belly's telling you, I'm depressed, I'm frustrated, I'm anxious, and you go and eat more cookies or whatever your thing is. I really like sweets, so cookies is what I'll say there. If you eat more cookies, then it perpetuates the cycle.
Right.
So a good reset, like Austin's saying, is juicing. So if you're, if you just need an all or nothing type thing, doing a reset on your body with juice is amazing. And then reintegrate with, some healthy choices.
Yeah. I can't tell how many people we've worked with that we've just said, hey, juice for the next 30 days. Here's some recipes. Go buy this juicer. You can get a nice one on Amazon for $80. Here's some recipes.
Then you'll train your brain. This is awesome.
Yeah. And
you'll feel so good.
Yeah. And so again, use the medicine to get to a place of sustainability. But then if you need to go past that, you've got to take it seriously enough to make a lifestyle change. And it's very cognitive. It's very scaffolded up to make highly value-driven decisions. We understand that. And if you're in a place where you're really struggling, it might be hard to even know what your values are, and it might be hard to make choices based on those values. But the first thing you got to do is be in community with good people that love you, that can hold you accountable, and it can love you through the struggle. 2 is to get professional help. And number 3 is you got to look at your whole lifestyle. If you're seeing a doctor and they're throwing a medicine at you and saying, check back in with me in 180 days and we'll see how you're doing, they are not serving you. They're not. What they should be telling you is, and looking at is, let's look at what you're eating. Let's look at what you're drinking. Let's look at the environments you're in, okay? Are you in a high-stress environment 24/7? You're probably going to feel depressed, okay? Most people cannot handle being in an extreme stress environment unless they are wildly scaffolded up, both physiologically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually, okay?
Yeah.
And so...
I want to say a quick disclaimer on the juice. So juicing all fruit won't help you. You need to make sure you're getting in good fibers, good vegetables in there. Yeah. And we just would recommend that you seek out good counsel on that before you go and just quit all food and start juicing. Yeah. Because this is not an episode on juicing. We could do a full episode on juicing, but this is just some tips for you to then go and educate yourself a little bit further.
Yeah, for us, our typical juice is going to have some pineapple, some celery, some carrot, a little bit of spinach, lots of ginger, and some cucumber. And we might do that for breakfast and lunch and then have eggs for dinner, and it's just amazing how well God made your body so powerful. He made your body so incredibly powerful. And we could talk a ton about the spiritual side of this. And our disposition is always, until God fully heals you, here's what we recommend you do. Right. While you're waiting for God to heal you, if you've asked God to heal you, while you're waiting for God to heal you, here's the advice we have for you. And this is what we have. And so the last thing to understand with the medicine piece too is, and this goes back to the coaching counseling side, is you got to understand the role trauma has on your life. Okay, trauma has this way of searing the brain. Okay, when you have a traumatic thing happen to you when you're younger, and you have 2 types of trauma. You've got ACE score trauma, which is adverse childhood experience. It would behoove anyone listening to this, if you don't know what I'm talking about, to Google ACE trauma, ACE.
Figure out your score.
Yeah, and you can figure out your score. And then we have what's called developmental trauma, okay, which is more about how you developed, and it's more little trauma over time. Okay, kind of think about it like that, and how our own development was traumatized. Okay. But you can take someone who maybe their body physiologically, genetically is functioning perfectly, insert a huge trauma into their life, and it could throw everything off. Everything off. At the end of the day, I do not believe that we were made to or should have to, in quotes,
air quotes,
rely on neurological altering medication our entire life. If you need it to manage so you can get better, that's fine. If you have to take it as an intervention to continue to get better, look at your entire lifestyle. Because that medicine is helping you maintain better, but it's keeping you from best. Yeah. Let me say that again. The medicine's helping you maintain better, but it is keeping you from best. Okay? Because a lot of those medicines help you feel less, but all feelings come from the same faucet. So they might be helping you feel less sadness, but you're probably feeling less joy. Okay? That's our big piece on that. We could do an entire episode just on that question. I could do 3 episodes on it because I like nerding out on really that stuff. But what you put in your belly, what you rub on your skin, and what you breathe in your lungs, the water you drink, the sunlight you do or don't have,
clean your home with.
the stuff you clean your home with, how much you sleep at night, I'm going to argue overall will have a far greater effect, okay, on you than you'll ever imagine, okay? I just can't stress enough. And I feel sadness when I talk about this because, and I feel happy because we get to help so many people make easy shifts.
Right.
Like when people are struggling with this, one of the first things I'm like is, what's your diet? That I ask. I'm like, what's your diet like? What do you eat? What do you drink? Do you smoke? Do you drink alcohol? Like, do you take drugs? How stressful is your environment? Do you sleep? Do you get vitamin D? Do you get out in the sun? Okay, like, do you have Glade plugins in your house? Do you rub lotion? What kind of lotions and perfumes do you rub all over your body? And they're like, all the above. I'm like, I have good news for you. My solution for you is going to be way cheaper than you thought. Just cut all that crap out. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, yeah, I feel completely different.
Yeah. Even people who have migraines, I'm like,
oh my goodness.
First of all, are you expressing your anger? Nod to a previous episode.
Yeah.
Are you expressing your emotions, flushing the pipes? But also, what kind of environment are you in?
Here's the thing too. It's also like, we don't even look at, and I don't want to overwhelm people with stuff to look at because I'm not like that. I'm not an alarmist. But like for female health, a lot of these leggings that are made with microplastics and I can name all the different things, and they're tight to their skin in sensitive places. The amount of female endocrine system dysregulation we're seeing in the world is mind-blowing right now.
Well, yeah, infertility is at an all-time high.
Infertility is at an all-time high. Go look up the ingredients to your leggings and then ask yourself, I wonder if it's a good idea that those materials are tight against my skin like a rubber band for 12 hours a day. And I wonder if any of that stuff is off-gassing or seeping into my skin. Just think about that. And dudes, yeah, anyways.
Same.
Yeah, same. Same. Look at, I mean, so, okay, third question. Man, what a great, that medicine question was a great one. Thank you for whoever submitted that. We love you.
I'm just sitting here, a little turned on.
Oh, good.
You're so thorough with your answers.
Well,
so educated.
That's the tip of the iceberg. We could keep rolling on that.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
Your
all right,
wonderful smart brain.
Third question.
Okay.
And this question would actually be a lot simpler. You doing it? I'll ask you this question since I talked a lot on the last one. And thanks for teaching me everything I knew about that last question. I really appreciate it. So question 3 is, how do I know what or what not to share with my spouse? And let me set up the question a little bit for you. I think this question was asked under the kind of the auspice or context of, some people would say share everything. Some people say don't overshare because you don't want to overload your spouse or bog them down, or fill their head with unnecessary bits of information. We talk a lot about withholding. It's really important to us. How do I know what or what not to share with my spouse?
Yeah.
How would you address that?
So this question was also a follow-up to another episode, the withholding episode. So nod to that. If you haven't listened to that, finish this episode, but then that's something you can put on your list, is the withholding episode. Definitely forgot the title at this moment. But this specific question was asked by a female, and she had been given advice about not sharing with your husband too much because they have so much on their plate, on their mental, emotional, load as the provider, as the care, as the provider of the home, the leader, and you don't want to share too much to bog them down or to burden them. So one of the first things that we ask couples, and the main thing that I want you listeners to remember, is, does it affect connection? So if you're ever asking yourself, which we as humans do a lot, should I share that with my spouse? Should I ask that? Ask yourself, does it affect our connection?
Yeah. And if the answer is yes, then you share.
Then definitely share. No matter how hard that might be, how that might, you might have some stories and fear about how that might affect your connection. But ultimately, if it is something that you're avoiding saying because of fear that it might affect your connection, you best believe it's going to be affecting your connection.
Yeah. Because here's the thing. If you withhold what will affect the connection, then I'm going to treat you in a way that will help me continue to avoid that, and then you're going to notice it.
Yeah.
So like, for example, like let's just say that I dropped a mug on the deck while having coffee this morning and I broke the mug. And yeah, let's just say that happened. Unless I was really sad about it, feeling guilty that maybe it was your special mug that I dropped and I didn't want you to know because I thought maybe you'd be bummed. If I just dropped a mug on the deck and broke it, I don't think, for me, that's not going to affect our connection. So I don't need to tell you that. Okay, but again, if I dropped a mug that was your special mug that we got in Hawaii on our 1-year anniversary, and I'm like, oh man, I broke Rachel's favorite mug. When I tell her, she's going to be sad. I really don't want to like have to tell her, so I'm not going to tell her. That would affect our connection. Okay. Let's say that I come home from the office and I've had a really long, rough day. I've had a lot of really hard calls, and I'm just maybe I'm just feeling low about myself that day. That would affect our connection, me telling you that. Like, hey, Rach, like, I just want to be honest. I had a really hard day today. I'm just kind of feeling low. I would really like to request some encouragement. But like, let's just say that I was at the office and we had, I don't know, 3 contracts were late for something, or 3 deposits for events were late, or I don't know, something like that. Purely logistical that would not affect your and I's connection. I don't tell you that stuff. Right. The deciding factor for me and for a lot of couples that we work with is, would you knowing this affect the way we show up with each other? Okay.
Right.
Because let's just say that I am feeling low about myself and I don't tell you that, I might try to compensate for that by either acting in a way I wouldn't normally act or pointing out things in you that you're doing wrong. Okay.
Or fishing for compliments.
Or fishing for compliments. Yes. You will always say what you want to say. If you know you need to say it and you won't say it directly, you'll say it indirectly. Always. That's why people are passive aggressive.
Again, back to our first question that was submitted, and our suggestion is to just say exactly what you're thinking and don't ask those questions or play those shadow games. So yeah, that's a pretty simple thing to live by and ask yourself, will this affect our connection? If you're withholding, will it affect your connection?
Yeah.
And if that's true, then definitely share it.
Yeah. If you had eggs for breakfast, you may not necessarily need to tell them that,
Right.
But if, you woke up this morning and the kids were going insane and there's a big mess in the kitchen and you felt super overwhelmed and you just need a little encouragement, but, it will not serve anyone to not tell your spouse that. Okay.
And I think assessing how you share, because you could say, oh, it's just been such a rough day, and kind of dump on your spouse.
Yeah.
But one thing we ask each other a lot is, what do you want?
Yeah.
And so for you to ask yourself, okay, if I'm sharing this with my spouse, what is it that I really want? So then I can just say, hey, so this happened. I'm really wanting encouragement, or I'm really sad. Can I cry on your shoulder? Whatever it is that you need or want, be clear about that as well.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, how do I know what to share and not to share? If it affects your connection, if by them knowing it would help them know you better, connect with you better, and if by them knowing it would help you feel more connected, you share it. Okay?
Yeah.
And then there's also the layer of whatever just feels fun to share, which affects connection, But there might be things that I'll tell you that you might not have any clue about, even what I'm talking about, because it's something work-related or, technical related. And you're like, yeah, great. I love that you share that with me. It's like, and I appreciate that because you're my best friend. So I like just sharing stuff, So
yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, that leads us to our nonprofit shout out for today.
Woo!
We are shouting out Mother's Refuge. They're local here to the Kansas City area. They are an organization that helps young mothers, whether homeless or in need of support, through their pregnancy and the first years of motherhood, to give them housing, medical support, clothing, all kinds of stuff. If you go to their website, mothersrefuge.org, the link is in the description, please go check them out.
Yeah.
Pray for them, donate whatever you feel led to. And of course, if you don't keep up your word on this episode, challenge.
On the challenge.
If you agree to that with your spouse, then you can donate $10 to them every single time you don't keep your...
Yeah, every time you ask a question, donate $10 to Mother's Refuge. Yeah. So, your big action item today is just to listen to this episode with your spouse. Okay? Or make sure that they listen to it. because I think this one,
Yeah.
especially the first and third question, will really apply to a lot of people and will create more connection in your marriage. It'll help you communicate better, help you just stay in flow with each other more and more. And so we love when couples are listening to these episodes together, or at least they can listen to them apart, but going through the episodes together, we're just getting a lot of really good feedback on couples just growing and enhancing their connection.
Yes,
So
it'll spark good conversation.
that's right. Well, thank you for watching this episode or listening to this episode. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, thumbs up, all the things on all the platforms, because when you do that, it helps other couples like you find what we're doing, and hopefully we can help them like we have hopefully helped you. So thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.